A new film premiering tonight and this weekend here on Mountain Lake PBS documents the work of Marjorie Lansing Porter, who traveled the Adirondacks collecting rare folk songs that are being rediscovered 60 years later. And Paul Larson from Mountain Lake PBS is the producer of Songs to Keep. He is here with us along with Jack LeDuc, who knew Marjorie Lansing Porter. And we're going to find out a little more about that in just a moment. But Paul, why don't we start with you? What is the story behind Songs to Keep?
Well, it's a story about a historian and a journalist named Marjorie Lansing Porter. She lived in Essex County, and in the 1940s, she began collecting folk songs, meaning she recorded people singing these songs. And these people were older people. They were from a disappearing population, and if she hadn't gotten the songs when she did, these songs would have disappeared because no one else remembered them. And in more recent times, a group named Tawny, Traditional Arts in upstate New York, began re-recording the songs with modern-day folk musicians. So the documentary is really the story of Marjorie Lansing Porter's life and how she collected these songs with this primitive soundscriber, this primitive recording device, and the re-recording of the songs, the making of the new album.
What kind of songs are we talking about?
Well, we're actually talking about traditional folk songs. That means these are the songs that the trappers would sing, the lumberjacks would go out in the woods, and they would stay in a shanty all winter long. They had no form of entertainment. There was no radio, no recordings. So what they would do on a Saturday night was they'd take turns and they would either sing a song or tell a story. So these songs come from that kind of tradition.
And Jack, you knew Marjorie Lansing Porter. You grew up in Keysville, New York, and she lived there. Tell us about her. What do you remember about her?
I was very young. I was 12 years old. I was in the Boy Scouts back then, and when the Boy Scouts had an affair, an event coming up, I would go to the newspaper, the Essex County Republican, one of the oldest newspapers in New York State, still being published. And I would do a report on these for the newspaper. And many times, Marjorie Lansing Porter was there. I had never realized this was important, to collect these old songs. She was collecting folk songs and music. And I wished I had paid more attention to them at the time, but I was 12 years old from a small town, and this was all new to me. But I was still mesmerized by it, and she impressed me very much, because the first time in my life I had heard about names like Pete Seeger, Burl Ives, and she mentioned a lot of others. And as I went along in life, I'd start hearing these people. And it was shortly after that I started, and not only hearing them, but paying attention to them. And I became interested in folk music. She was the one that really inspired me to look into folk music and these early singers and early life, the trappers that you mentioned, the lumbermen. And it was very interesting to me. What I regret is, at the time I was taking pictures, starting in just then with a small box camera for the Boy Scouts, and I wished I had taken more pictures of Marjorie and the people she was dealing with. I hadn't realized it at the time, but she impressed me so much at that time that I right to this day, I thank her for pointing me along a historical path. And she was a very pleasant woman. Now, I was 12 years old. I don't know how old she was, but she was an elderly woman to me. Of course, anybody 18 or over was old to me, too. But between she and Pearlie Stoughton, the editor of the paper, they gave me a good education at a very young age.
So she was a historian and journalist and was just passionate about preserving these Adirondack folk songs.
Passion is the word. I remember sitting in the editorial office, the small office, and she would be talking to the editor and myself, and you could see the passion in her voice, hear the passion in her voice, and feel it in the air.
And the great thing is, so many Adirondack artists, recording artists, musicians, came forward and have recorded some of these old songs that were collected by Marjorie Lansing Porter. And they put on a number of concerts throughout the summer around the North Country, which was fantastic. They also have recorded these, and they're part of a CD. And that's wonderful now that this collection is not only being preserved, but to have the recording artists of today reproduce them and re-record them.
Yeah, it's a wonderful CD to listen to. It just flows so beautifully the way they've produced it. And 3 of those recording acts are going to be in our studio for our live event coming up at 9 o'clock. And that includes Jamie Savage and Sue Grim Hanley. They're going to sing a song called Great Granddad, which has its tradition in the Western folk culture, but it migrated over to the Adirondacks. And then Alex Smith is a young Adirondack folk singer, and he's going to be singing the Ballad of Blue Mountain Lake, which is probably the most well-known song from this collection. Even Pete Seeger has sung this song. And finally, Dave Ruck is going to be singing. He's the producer of the album, and he's going to sing The Days of 49, which is a mining song, but it comes from the tradition of the lumberjacks who used to sing this old mining song.
And you mentioned Dave Ruck. You actually have a clip from the documentary tonight to show of that.
Yeah, we have a clip because Dave Ruck, he travels from school to school teaching lessons through music. So he's teaching a history lesson through music in this clip, and it's of the Northern Adirondack Central School, and it's Brian Baker's 5th grade music students.
In the days of old, in the days of old, how often I repine. Were the days of old when we dug up the gold in the days of 49.
Teaching artist Dave Ruck travels to many schools in the Adirondack region, sharing history through song.
There was Nantucket Bill, I knew him well, a fella that was fond of tricks. At a poker game, he was always there and heavy with his bricks. He'd draw his cards and ante up and go in a hatful blind. In a game of bluff, Bill lost his breath in the days of 49. In the days of old, in the days of gold, how often I repine. For the days of old when we dug up the gold in the days of 49. It's a fantastic way for the kids to learn, and for some kids it's a much more accessible medium than to just sit and be lectured to.
I like the song because it's an old folk song, and I like old folk songs, but I like country songs too.
That's where this song comes from. It actually comes from the logging camps, the lumber camps. It's a song that was sung there. But it's not about the logging camps, is it? What's it about? Mining. Right, the California Gold Rush.
I like the Days of 49 song because it's about gold, and I like gold.
In the days of old, in the days of gold, how oft times I repine. For the days of old when we dug up the gold in the days of 49.
That's fantastic. So Dave Ruck is going to schools and teaching kids.
What a wonderful way to learn.
Yeah, fantastic. And in his own way, again, preserving these songs and passing them on to another
the younger generation.
That's fantastic. And Jack, you mentioned that Marjorie Lansing Porter knew a lot of these musicians and groomed many of them, was probably an inspiration to many of those who are now performing these songs.
Well, it was an inspiration to me because she would mention these names and you could see she was on a first name basis with them, a very friendly basis with them. They were young folks coming up, struggling in the music industry, but it gave me the inspiration to find out more about them and follow their careers up through. And I was into photography at the time, and it gave me the impetus to take more pictures and preserve them, because you could preserve history through photography. And I've tried to do that almost all my life, and it's still an important thing to do, because so much of history is lost, shoved away, and Marjorie Lansing Porter gave me the inspiration to hang on to it and try to record it, try to keep history alive.
And Paul, also this documentary, there's actually a number of celebrities who appear in this documentary.
Yes. First and foremost, we have Pete Seeger, who actually collaborated with Marjorie Lansing Porter on an album, and he loved her collection and did a whole album worth of the collection. So the Ballad of Blue Mountain Lake, for example, is on his album. We also have Peter and Paul of Peter, Paul, and Mary, actually Noel Paul Stuckey and Peter Yarrow. We had a delightful conversation with them, and they give their insights into this kind of traditional folk music. And we also have the Bacon brothers, Michael and Kevin Bacon, who nicely donated their time and talent to this project. It's the second major project we've done with them here at Mountain Lake PBS.
And people might wonder why Kevin Bacon and his brother Michael, why would they be interested in these types of songs?
Well, they live in Manhattan, but they have really close ties to the Adirondacks. Their family has a cabin in the Adirondacks, and they have been coming for years, and Michael actually stays many weeks in every summer at this cabin, so they actually adore the Adirondacks.
So the documentary, Songs to Keep, Treasures of an Adirondack Folk Collector, premieres tonight at 9 right here on Mountain Lake PBS. Paul Larson, Jack LeDuc, thanks a lot for taking the time.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.